What's happening, everyone? Happy Tuesday. Got an exciting show. HEX Power Hour. We did this one before. And yeah, it was always a banger. Got access and Crispy in the house again. Yeah, it should be a very, very interesting stream. I'm excited to get into it, to look at all that, look at the data, look at the perspectives, and yeah, see what y'all think in the chat as well. So get your questions in. Not sure how much time we'll have. We're gonna go for about an hour 10 or so. And it should be a fun stream. So without further ado, get to chat in just a minute. Back to the show. Access and Chris, how's it going, guys?
Yo, what's going on there, RHMax?
Hey now.
I got my Hex background, got my Hexius and my Hexius stuff right here. Got this thing, that little chart. One day I hope we'll see the thing go that way again.
Hey, Brian Magruder just sent me a Hex hat. Finally, I got the Pulse hat, I got the PulseX hat, I got the Hex hat. I got some other hats, and I got my Axis hat. But yeah, my Hex hat, man. I've been waiting for that one for a long time. I should actually go grab that thing. Hold on.
All right. Yeah, I've got a couple, but I like the ones that are filled in the back, without the strap. I like the, what do you call it? I forget the brand.
I got all kinds of straps.
Yeah.
I got the.
Where's my RHMax hat?
I got this is a combo hat.
I got one somewhere actually.
This combo hat, the combo. Like gold.
Yeah, I like the gold. Yeah,
I got no P-Hux hats.
I don't have any P-Hux hat yet. I want a 2 P-Hux hat. I got the PulseX hat, which I think the green is sick. And then yes, I got the infamous Hex hat, but I wish it came with Hex colors. But it's still amazing. These are $100 hats, man. So shout out to Brian Magruder and the gang. It's pretty cool. I got another PulseChain hat.
I think he's given me a hat or two, even through he's maybe donated to our local meetup group and stuff, to our people around. I think I've got a hat or so from that. And then at the PulseCon, the first one, I think where I was giving out some swag myself, I think they traded me the Hex merch.
One of my favorite shirts is that shirt you gave out. Like that's the Pumpamental shirt for PulseChain. That's the fit in that fabric. I freaking love that shirt.
Right. I know they feel so good. To all the ones I make come from like that kind of fabric. And the Hex one, the first Hex one, the second Hex one, the big Pumpamental and PulseChain one. I've got the PulseX one. Yeah, next time I see you guys, I'm going to see if I got some extra shirts to throw your way too.
Look, the OG Hexicans that still have massive stakes, they're still here, and they're sending out $100 hats to other OG Hexicans that still love Hex. So it's not dead, guys.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, Chris is like, "What the fuck's my hat?" Do you wear hats?
Hey, I might have to get on him about that. That's pretty disappointing. Come on,
I wear a hat almost every day, every stream. I wear my Genius hat.
I got freaking Hex hats up there above my sign too. You can't even see them. I'll bring you one of mine when I meet you next week.
Hats on hats, gentlemen. What is the state of the art? What have you guys been up to? What's the ecosystem looking like? What do you want to start off on?
Yeah. Go ahead, Crispy. Of course, I have plenty. I could talk to. I'm way longer than an hour, so I'll let Crispy go first.
Yo. Man, I don't know. Bigger picture. I know I'm feeling the emotions. A lot of people are feeling it, right? Cycle looks like a normal cycle. We're kind of like in a normal place. Action is kind of normal. I know people, disappointed they did not seeing rocket ships up, but I remind myself whenever I look at the charts what's going on.
Yeah, Crispy and I actually went through the kind of deep dive on this on Monday night. Some of the more the cycle data, cycle wide data on Bitcoin, ETH, Pulse. Pulse is a screaming buy right now, and so by extension, anything that's tied to it that's down against the dollar is probably even a better buy, because chances are it's like leverage to the downside. If it never got a really good pump, in the case of some of those that got big pumps like Ink token, PulseX is still a little bit up, and like the Axis token, Fire token, those things are up massively against Pulse already. So if you wanted to get into those, any of that stuff, like you'd want to maybe buy Pulse because it's the cheapest thing right now and ride it up and then buy in later. That might be the play, because right now, like, it's getting to that point where like the core assets are so cheap. Hex is extremely cheap. I think I want to make a case today for why Hex is a store of value still, even at these prices. if you're willing to wait as long as it's going to take, and you're not going to like be needing to sell ever, like basically, and what I mean by that is like, if you're willing to play this game for the long haul, not saying you can't do like year to 2 year stakes and stuff, but if you really think long term, that's going to be the best way to play this game. I think from this point, especially because you're just able to capture so much units that you don't even have to stake the whole entire amount that you bought, because it's so affordable. And when you're talking like half a penny per unit, or like 1/10 of a penny or 2/10 of a penny for an EHEX. I think they're both important pieces of the ecosystem. I don't think you're getting away from either one of them. And GIF tech has proven that you can create additional utility on the PulseChain side using a bridged in asset, no problem. Like, it's already proven that. So that was like the version 0.1. Like, you could take that to the nth degree and provide value. And we're seeing some of that with like the exotic farms on 9inch, how much APR that's spitting out, or like the 2Fox ecosystem, how much APR that's spitting out for some of those, favored pools. And so there's all these places where the market hasn't even really figured out fully yet the time value of money component of being in these pools, and the P&E, that profit to earning ratio of these holding these coins over like a longer time frame and earning these high APRs. And so this is kind of like the battle that, I didn't even mention the PulseX farms as well. Same thing. So I think Hex is really up against that. All these other areas to earn massive rewards and huge price appreciation at this point, but it is the most discounted thing and still has like a $500 million plus market cap. So probably segue into that.
Yeah, I was just looking at the farms too, and so 28% Hex and Pulse. That's the only, for some reason I was thinking there's more than one Hex farm. There's only one Hex farm with Pulse right there.
There's only one Hex farm.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, right?
Well, yeah, explain that. Why is that? Why not have a Hex PLSX farm too?
Routing. I mean, at least some intelligence goes into setting up the farm pairs to, get optimal routing. For those who are providing liquidity, initially you kind of think, well, maybe everybody didn't think this, but you think that it doesn't matter what the pairs are you pick, but it does. It does. And so some pairs deadhead, so no volume goes through them. And other pairs, there's just so much going on with what they're connected to, they actually draw value out. So yeah, there's some intelligence that goes into it. Anyways, so the idea is that right at the moment, anyways, if Hex is being traded, EHEX goes to Hex, Hex goes to Pulse, right? Those are the primary pairs. And I think somebody really important noted that there might not even be very much liquidity between Hex and Ink to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I mean, the routing was a huge piece of it for sure. That was a good thought. And then I think it's important as the designer of this whole system with that routing in mind, that you're making all the data and volume flow through Pulse. That just logically makes sense. In the beginning, it was Bitcoin. All the altcoins that existed lived on different blockchains, because back then it was like each coin had to have its own blockchain. And so and it was all traded on a centralized exchange, and you had to use Bitcoin as the counterpart to those pairs, because, for even in the very beginning, there was no USDT. There was just a USD BTC pair, that was served up by the centralized exchange. And then everything else was just measured in BTC terms, because BTC was abundant back then. We're talking like, 10,000 BTC might have only been a few $100s or a few $1,000s. So you'll notice that this trend is going to continue as we go into the future. And I know I'm getting way too probably deep, but it's exciting to think about how liquid PulseChain is going to be in the future, but how scarce these units could get, especially if the right people are going to get these things, hold on to them, and then keep the golden goose for themselves and just take over. Like, think of it like Manhattan, like Sailor likes to talk about, or think of it like real estate. There's only so much good real estate on any blockchain. And so it really becomes a territorial thing where, different big players come into the game and they want to absorb all the real estate in their, jurisdiction.
Well, I like to jump on that units point. I think we've been given a gift, and this segues over to Hex as well. But we have the ability to get many, many more units than in the past, right? Of many of the PulseChain assets as well as Hex, right? And so that does set you up for something different because, like, man, I don't know, people have had to see it themselves, but you might remember back a time when you're like, nah, I'm not going to spend a few $100s for PDI. Well, now instead of paying a few $100s, you could pay a few thousand, right? So I mean, 100x, 1000x on some of these things, and so yeah, picking the right assets will matter. But when those assets go up in value, you can't replace them, right? And so getting the units while they're cheap, super good. And then the whole hex narrative, we have like a double hit here where not only are the units super cheap, mining is being faded, staking is being faded. And so like I went on a little bit of rant last night. I mean, there's a possibility we see, some crazy ass numbers like, in theory, right, 5,000-6,000% APY on Hex on PulseChain if this continues, right? Because that's what will happen, right? Suddenly you'll get to a point where those APYs are so high that it's just incredibly stupid not to go into them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that is the inevitable conclusion, is that everyone gives up on it and it's so cheap and it's so undervalued. And then there's just this all the natural inflation goes into these few people's hands, and then they come in and they buy up all their coins. I don't think so. I think we're closer to an inflection point than people want to admit or even really know. I think within the next 8 to 10 months, we're going to see, probably within weeks, we're going to see some action because, Richard just said something about July 8th is an exciting time that's coming up where we might get a dismissal of the case. At least we have to hear back from relevant parties on whether or not that's going to happen. So these legal proceedings are going to continue forward, and, as those things happen, you'll see price action that reflects whatever outcome comes from that. And so keep your eyes on that early to mid-July dates for some sort of action. Bitfinesse says, this is how generational wealth is accumulated. We'll likely never see another chain launch that's so free and be able to get in early. Long-term holders will build real legacy for their bloodline. It's hard to see. That's actually really good vision there. Bitfinesse, was a massive streamy back in the day. I don't know what's the word, but like he was always in the streams, pumping hacks, talking about it in there and supporting it. And that's long-term vision right there. He understands that, how many times you're going to get a Bitcoin billionaire to come in here and start a new chain and have a track record of creating a coin that did a 10,000x with awesome tokenomics way before anybody else did. I think Sunny Day and who else was saying this? Ben Potman and Hayden from the PTGC and UFO community have been saying like how much gratitude they have because Richard Hart is giving us this 1 year to 2 year opportunity to build a base and a foundation for our communities and build on this chain while things are still affordable. I don't think people are giving that enough credit. Chris, you and I have done this as well, and it's like I made a post last year, said it's my pinned tweet. At this point, it was something like that. Once the green candle, before the green candles print, that just let everyone know that Richard Hart's the GOAT because he gave everyone a chance to start back over with Ethereum on a faster, cheaper chain. So, and he's well funded. He's got 170,000 ETH in the SAC addresses, and God knows how much other stuff that is undetectable. That could just be used to just throttle the prices up of this stuff indefinitely. We could really kind of decouple away if it's deployed in a strategic manner.
Yeah, but I kind of think what we'll see is that if that was to happen, it would reward the faithful, those who follow the methodology.
Yeah, remember this too is like a bet on Hex is a bet on Richard Hart. It's an investment in him just as much as it is an investment in a coin. You're not getting a chance to buy Bitcoin over again. The next best thing is to buy a founder. That's what you're doing when you buy into this thing, and you believe that he's not going to die. He's going to be here, and he's going to have good ethics. This is something that was the perfect word to describe all my thoughts and feelings about the Richard Hart ecosystem. Was said by this Maria dev who's doing their Tropa stuff. He said that this is really a big question of ethics, right, on the blockchain. And I was like, yep, nailed it. That's true. Richard Hart is like the ethical side of cryptocurrency, and yeah.
I would say I think a lot of people are starting to see it as, either, Richard representing Hex in a lot of ways, but there's still, I don't know, like when I came into it, I never thought about, Richard was always, the founder. He's always the guy like, oh, it's awesome. Like he's always promoting it. Number one marketer, number one, just person around, the leader, all that stuff too. But it always was, I mean, Hex to this day is still like DeFi to me. I mean, yeah, there's whales and there's people with bags and there's things that can happen. And we saw what happened after Richard stopped streaming, and all this stuff happened too. When he gets attacked, it hasn't, at least historically speaking, looked good for the price. But I don't know, like, all the other DeFi protocols and stuff launched out there. I mean, you got on Ethereum, otherwise Aave and Curve and all that stuff too. I don't know. It just seems like Hex is in this conversation of it can be it. I mean, it is DeFi, but it also, DeFi has this reflection of the market and the community and all those other things that kind of get added up to, okay, maybe it's not just one thing or two things. It's like this formula of all these things coming together that actually reflect how well it does, or, where it goes in the cycle type of thing.
Yeah, it really is that big, because this Hex concept is really a fix the inflation problem of the monetary policy of the global fiat currencies. That's what this solves for.
Well, hey, let me ask you guys a question as we're talking about this, right? You guys know how I feel about mining, and I think we can agree that mining is off, right? So meaning it's coming down, it's trending down. People are not buying into that. But you know what they are buying into? Speculation on Hex. And so my proposition is this: as long as I'm a miner and people are going to be speculating on Hex, I'm in pretty good shape. Because if they're going to speculate on Hex, they don't have to mine, right? I mine. I get the rewards. As long as the price is following a cycle, there's liquidity, there's paths in and out, I'm good, And so I'm kind of looking at it that way. I mean, kind of a shitty way of saying it maybe, but because I want everybody to participate that wants to, but I'm talking about it all the time, and I'm getting more negativity than otherwise. Meanwhile, holders continue to go up every single day. More and more people are accumulating Hex. They're just not mining it.
Well, not just, I mean, I think there's, I know Crispy, you got some probably, I don't know if you want to share some data on it or otherwise, but when I've been following Ben and stuff with a lot of his charts, there's quite a bit of, mining, staking, whatever you want to call it, still going. I mean, surprisingly, still trending and kind of maybe not as much as it was before, but it's surprising. Every time I hear that, the staking narrative, is dead, or it's not, people aren't interested in doing it anymore, they don't trust it. How could they after this or that or EHEX or whatever it is? But then I look at some charts and I'm like, I don't know. Like, it still seems like there's plenty of people still making stakes or plenty of protocols incentivizing them.
Don't confuse the faithful with the fact that less people are doing it. If you look at the t-shirt counts, it tells the story. We can also look at the longevity counts, not the average. You can't use that stupid average staking length, right? Because that just measures the average of existing stakes, right? You got to look at what people are really doing. And so what I point to RHMax is you go out into 2039. There's 20,000 t-shirts on PulseChain. 20,000. There should be at some point 4 million. But we've seen a 2 to 3 year trend downwards in t-shirts, and so what is opening up is this huge opportunity where the more it gets faded, the people who actually are doing, like you were showing some staking activity, whatnot, the people who are actually doing that staking activity, they will get increased ROIs against anybody who comes after them. And because there's fewer people coming in after them, the longer that goes on, the greater their returns for participating. So it creates like this perfect storm that people don't want to be involved. They don't want to be involved, right? We're going to try to convince them if they want to listen, right? But if you are doing it, you're just going to get more and more of the payout. I'm literally telling you that if the fudders are correct, APY is going to go up 200x if they're right.
Is that the kind of thing that it's supposed to happen, where you have people, they get in early, they make money, and they, you know, they leave, or they take profit or whatever it is. And then new people come in. Hey, there's you know, the price goes down. There's more t-shirts available. There's less people restaking, and then new people come in and just start the cycle over. Is that what you know, we would? Well, I guess what is happening now versus what we prefer to do? Yeah.
No, the measure of success is that you onboard another 1 million people into Hex, and then they all stake. That would be the ultimate measure of success. And what's going to do that is massive price appreciation on PulseChain, which should throttle up the prices of both hexes. And then at the end of the cycle, you're going to be left having this bag, and I'm sure some percentage of that, like they'll get a free ride, but then at some point, you know, some of that capital that's been gained is going to like find itself locked away in the hex staking. And if it just starts small, it can kind of avalanche its way into a massive exponential price curve for the hexes, and it can have a massive second cycle in the same way Bitcoin had. That's an argument we haven't seen or heard in a long time, is like Hex is a better Bitcoin. Like we just haven't heard community members talking like that anymore, because it's just underperformed so drastically. But that comes with a lot of context and stuff too about why it is the way it is. It's because a lot of the value has been distributed across so many new assets on a new chain. But eventually, like, unless new money's flowing in to each of those assets individually, eventually it kind of like they become like endpoints, and then they kind of fade, and a lot of the money will flow back into where it's treated best. And you know, that could be Hex. I shouldn't say definitively that it will be at the end of the cycle, but it makes sense to me that that's kind of where a lot of this money could end up back in, especially if you know, I'm getting 2,000% APR for like a 5-year stake. That's better than you're going to get on any of these other decentralized exchanges or farms, you know. So maybe that's what it takes, is longer term and less staking for longer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean,
it's reflexive system, I think, was the key words I wanted to spit out.
Yeah, a lot of us have done some different things with farming, LPing, and whatnot, right? And so we know what it means to us to look at the APYs, right? And so we look at something like that. I do, anyways. I see 100%, 200%. I get pretty excited about those things, right? Even though sometimes it's really a little trickle, even though you know, depending on the size of the position. So yeah, at some point, hex mining becomes so attractive that people will jump and go in that direction. Just, yeah, what level will that be? I don't know. Probably.
Yeah, what would it take to do 1,000% APR on a 1-day stake? I don't know. I don't know. And I'm not saying it needs to get there. I always like to look at it. I'm an absolutist sometimes, where I want to know.
Yeah.
What does it take to get a 1-day stake for 1,000?
We could probably figure that out.
Think about that. That's similar to the coupon rate on the HexCom Fusion.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like it's equivalent of saying, look, we'll pay you 10x the amount of value if you stake for 1 day. I mean, at some point, the system is so reflexive that it'll bounce back.
Yeah. Well, I think what's right now? What is it? It's about 7.5%.
I thought it was like 7 or 8%, right? Can you bring up all your data?
What's 200 times that?
200 times that?
7%. That's 1,400, right?
Times, let's just say 7%. Yeah, 1,400.
Yeah, so 1,400. So if nobody was to do any more mining at some point in the future, right? You know, you know, let's say 20,000 t-shirts exist. By the time we got to 2039, you would be, you'd be at 1,400% per day,
which is significant. And keep in mind, the other portion of this whole discussion piece is how much liquidity is backing this market. So it's a $500 million market cap, and it's backed by like $20 million of value. Just on the Hex Pulse pair, $20 to $30 million. I don't know what it is today. And so what percentage of that $500 million market cap is actually backed with like maximum extractable value? It's probably like somewhere in the realm of $10 to $20 million. So by the time that the Hex market were to, so first of all, if you're going to get those insane APRs and you're just a small guy, a fish that could bring in $1,000 and then stake for a day and pull off $10,000 tomorrow of Hex, there's going to be liquidity there for you today to do that, right? In today's terms. So the issue is that to get to that point where those APRs are that good, it would imply that a lot of that liquidity then got extracted away, and probably the price is a lot lower as well. But it's a chance to reignite the system, because we all know that there's only like about 20 to 25 billion user liquid supply of hex, and most of the rest of that's out longer. So at some point it just gets so cheap that it's like a rubber band. You know, it has been a long and painful few years, but it's not the end, man, by any stretch. I know some days I feel like it's like, you know, fuck hex, but I'm still buying hex at the same time as I'm saying it. So it's like, what am I really saying?
I think so. I think a lot of us have felt that way. A couple big things going on, right? Is the OA. So just as a backdrop to this little chart up here, I'll just explain real quick. The OA stabilizes the hell out of hex by the fact that it holds so much of the circulating supply, right? And so that's what actually allows a lot of what happens within hex, so much activity take place by the 10% of the other, you know, other amount of hex that's out there being held by users, because it's very hard for us to make substantial changes to the map, right, as individuals. So it's like a cruise ship that you can't really turn quickly, right? You got to go get all the way down to the Panama Canal and turn it around, right? And so when you look at this chart, there's a couple of big things that are happening here. One, going, you know, this is about a year's time. Going into the chart, you could pretty much see by the naked eye downward pressure on APY, right? Slowly APY coming down, right? And that has been, you know, general trend for a couple of years for sure. But then we get to the point, you know, somewhere around there, and at the end of 23, all of a sudden we got this flattening, which corresponds to you know, the staking interest falling off. All right, and then you can see that it stayed pretty flat until we started getting the extensive EHEX FUD, perhaps from you know, maybe a reaction to Richard's tweet. But look what happened afterwards. Even less people were staking. And so with the naked eye, what is the APY doing now? It ain't going down anymore, and it's not flat. But this is happening so slow. It's going up, for those who didn't know that's what I meant. But it's happening at such a pace that the average person be like, man, it's going to like boil the frog, right? So do they really care if there's a difference between 37 and 40? Of course I do, but I mean, not everybody cares about those numbers. But when it gets to 50, will that be enough? And that goes to your point. When the average is 60, will that be enough? When it's 100, will that be enough? Somebody will eventually go, at least some portion of the population go, yeah, I'm going to stake a little bit, right? Because I'm going to get some of the rewards. Because why would you pass them up? Now, against the backdrop of a future where there are always higher lows, or nearly always higher lows of hex, you get price protection built in because you're getting that APY.
Yes, because the people that's getting the inflation are the right kind of people. Then at that point, they're not selling. They're probably, they're at least strategically maneuvering. And plus, because PulseChain is so liquid, it's not necessarily to exit into fiat anymore. Also, the lives of these previous cycle 1 hexagons have been completely altered and changed by this in good and bad ways. But mostly, a lot of people made a lot of money. And so, like, they're going to want, I mean, at some point, you'd like to think that, you know, if there's any of them left, they're probably not needing to nuke anymore. I mean, we're not seeing that. I mean, this inflection point here on February or March was when the EHEX kill tweet from Richard came out, and that literally set the bottom. And ever since then, we're trending up and to the right on both of the hex APYs. That might have been the final, you know, slam down. EHEX looks really good for staking. And like I mean, gas has been sub 10 Gwei for months now. So like that argument's kind of fizzled. I think that's an interesting discussion. That would take like a few weeks of R&D to figure out, why is gas on Ethereum so cheap now? Is it because we made our own chain? Is it because
hexagons aren't there?
That's part of it. You know, is it because we're living in a multi-chain world? There's lots of new layer 2 options. You got base network, you got Solana, so then a lot of that activity has been distributed across all these other chains. And then that just really makes ETH the storehouse of value EVM for now.
I think it's L2. A lot of it's L2 these days.
Mm-hmm.
Because even Coinbases, aren't they like, they have Base, and I think they're pushing a lot of stuff to be like, you don't need to use Ethereum, just use Base, use whatever L2. And even I didn't Vitalik. I follow him on Twitter, and I see some of this stuff in his blogs, and yeah, I think he's pretty positive and like being like, yeah, L2s, just use no matter what anyone thinks about L2s, it's like they're being used, and that's that could be the simplest answer of why gas fees are, other than people, it's not like Ethereum. It's either people have slowed down in general using the blockchain, such as Ethereum, or they've moved a lot of transactions, a lot of stuff that was causing all the high gas fees and supply and demand stuff over to L2s. I mean, that makes sense to me.
That's interesting.
Research.
I can pull up
there's
Ethereum
combination there.
Well, when you guys are talking, I'm going to pull up Glassnode and let's see. Are there more active wallets on Ethereum right now than a few months ago, or are there less? We can find out.
Yeah. But I guess the question is like, why though? Too? Why is there more or less active wallets? It's because they stopped using crypto, such as Ethereum. If that was their main choice, or they moved all the stuff over to another chain.
Oh my God. I just saw that the amount of on exchange balance of Ethereum just smacked down to new lows.
Yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
I did not know that until just now. Let me show that to them.
That on Twitter.
But there was an important point to piggyback off what you said, Max, about like how liquid this DEX is going to be when people start denominating their worth in dollars, and they understand the importance of maintaining position sizes and letting them grow over decades of time. And that's going to make this a crypto denominated situation then. And it's not going to be like, I need to cash out, $100,000 today or $1,000 a day forever.
And it's a path you got to travel to, isn't it? I mean, like, listen,
yeah.
if you came in, you're playing with Robinhood, you bought $50.
Well, if you're $50,000 in debt and you just made $100,000 overnight, I get it. The natural human reaction is, I'm going to get out of my shit position in life. I'm going to solve for that, which means you're going to see a $50,000 sell candle on a chart. I get that. But the more times that happens, there's less of that left to happen until you get a whole new wave of people in. But that hasn't happened yet. That's just why I think we're running out of those kinds of people with the current user base we have.
We need more of the reaction of, instead of that, I just made a lot of money, cash out, of, just made a lot of money. What percentage do I want to put into a hex stake while these t-shirts are so cheap? Need more of that mindset.
Yep. And like that slide that Chris we just showed about how the APYs are climbing, you start getting 100% APR on, that was average, right? Average APR.
Yeah.
On open stakes. So,
yeah.
So then you could assume that if it was 67% on EHEX, let's say, if you're doing less than 3 years, you're getting what, like 15% maybe on what's open stakes average right now for stuff that was started years ago. It's setting up nicely for where these shorter term stakes can actually compete with ink and stuff like that, which is important. That's going to all play out. And I think that would be cool to do a mathematical proof of a lot of that stuff, but that's so much work, guys. Intuitively, the three of us can stand up here and just explain it with words a lot faster, and like, you'll see what we mean down the road, type of thing.
Yep.
But I mean, it'd be cool to get these huge institutions to go out and do these mathematical proofs of how this is all going to happen. But this here is like the Ethereum. Look at this. Ethereum just got. The blue line is the amount of Ethereum on exchanges right now. And on the 21st of May, douche. And then again on June 10th, douche. So let me zoom back out here.
Corresponding to news on the ETFs.
Do you think we'll have a liquidity crunch as far as if people want to get in for ETF or otherwise, making the ETH price go up? Because there's not a lot to buy or sell on exchanges. And it seems like some whales have been accumulating it earlier this year as well, which could be interesting.
Is grass green?
Yes, it very much so is. This whole entire accumulation range here on price, this like structure. Well, I guess you could say it was more like a bull flag of sorts. This was an accumulation range, and then look at all that ETH left the exchanges, and then that's when the price started to grind up. And then there was another accumulation range, which was inside of here. And then when the price was grinding down and people were saying we're going lower, all that left the exchanges. So if you're watching like the on exchange balance data, you can actually, it's a leading indicator of what's going to happen with price, because then after that price rose. And so what we're saying right now is that once again, you know, here we are leading into the ETH ETF. It's leaving, and it's leaving at a rapid rate in a situation where you're in this little mini bull flag, or, you know, we came out of this falling wedge, broke out. Now we're in like a little consolidation below resistance here. And it's just super
dude,
bullish.
I mean, the amount of ETH on the market almost is down to where it started, right?
Right. So if I draw a straight line across, I mean, there's just no ETH left at this point.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
You know, on exchanges. Now, that also could mean that a lot of this Ethereum left and went to DeFi and layer 2s and stuff, or it's being used in protocols. But the point is that it's like the oil and gas industry of blockchain. It's super needed and useful to use it. And because of all that, I think is why you got this situation where like it's just scarce and needed and required to transact on all this multi-chain world. And because it's so liquid, that's what it really boils down to, is liquidity at the end of the day. Man, this is setting up nicely for Pulse to get massive pumpage off of he who has all the ETH.
For sure.
Got a couple of questions I want to get to here as well. His Excellency, your name. Curious what you all think about Maria saying PulseChain will fail if HEX, PX don't achieve parity along with P stables.
I wouldn't take that too literally, but I understand the sentiment. I don't know if, meaning by literally, I mean to say that they exactly have to be the same price, right? I don't think that's the intent, but the idea they ought to be trading pretty damn close, right?
And then I think I can also add to that by saying, in terms of the P stables, because of how much is burnt away and what the promise of was with Pulse being potentially able to do a 14,000x, if it were to do such a thing, there's almost no way on earth that PDI couldn't pull off an additional 160x on the already thousands of x it's already accomplished. At this point, it's so perfectly positioned to do another 160x basically, because of the method by which it was burned away and the math between the ratios of all these bonded pairs. It gives it a situation set up where it's like, if Pulse goes and does, you know, thousands of X, like there's almost no world in which it didn't get a shot at hitting $1. So,
yep. Yeah. And pro tip for you, Hexons, if you want to go look at it, do an impermanent loss calculator on PDI to PUSDT and thank me later. You'll love the outcome of that.
J Perry 014, can you do a how-to on how to cash out your PulseChain crypto coins? Trying to figure out a safe way when a pump comes. Yeah, I did a stream before with Neil about some of the different strategies around some of that stuff. What do you guys think about cashing out strategy? When and if this glorious pump ever comes, how do you guys cash out?
Can I give you the opposite answer?
Go for it.
Diamond handed, we all sell on the same day. How about that? I'll let you know when.
Well, does he mean? Hold on, Jay Perry, if you're listening still, explain to me what you mean by that. Are you trying to set like let's say your bag turns into $1 million tomorrow? Are you trying to sell the $1 million tomorrow, or are you like, that determines for me the answer I'm going to give you?
Yeah.
Like, I think you're going to sell.
The ideal is between market sale and overtime. I think that's like the two canonical answers. That way,
yeah, I have my sense of humor. This is a constant topic for me, anyways, and people that I'm dealing with and working with on a daily basis, because it's, you know, I've said recently, it's neither easy nor fast to get out, and so it takes a little bit of planning. And sure, anybody can dump a market, right? I mean, you go push a button, but yeah, the access will give you that.
So and I mean, technically, all you need to do is convert your coins into Pulse, ETH, or a stable coin, bridge it back to Ethereum, and send it to your Coinbase account. Like, that's honestly, there's no reason why that's not a solution for like 90% of people. If you're trying to like pay bills and stuff, there's Spritz Finance. I I mean, there's a ton of different applications. Maybe that's a good news blog post I could put on my site sometime, or RHMax could do it as well. Just on Real Go Real DeFi, he could put a whole list of different routes. He could do little routing maps. He could do how to get from A to B to Z, all the different tools that you can use to get in and out. Because I mean, there's literally like a dozen really good ways to get any Pulse token into real world money.
Yeah, I don't see Jay Perry asking another question. But see, I took his question differently, not like what's the path out, but rather like how are you going to do this? What levers are you going to pull?
Well, I mean, the first thing that came to mind too is just with LP. I mean, if the price is going up in your coin and it's gaining against Pulse, for example, and you have a position, if I have a position there and I want to, slowly sell over time and earn fees or, whatever the range is, I don't want to get into LP too deep right now, but it's, I mean, isn't that the long-term solution of like, okay, I don't have to hurt the price chart. I can get it over time if, again, these things happen, if it does gain against whatever other coin you got paired with, for example.
We got a lot of competing discussion on that, yeah, right? Because you'll run into the people they'll give you lots of information about the impermanent loss situation you'll run into, which then makes people feel like they shouldn't do it because they're going to suffer the impermanent loss.
Well, that was an on purpose impermanent loss, right? Like you want more of the other asset.
Yeah.
You want more liquid asset that has, for example, if you want more Pulse, then you could, get liquidity from Pulse versus whatever coin that may not have, $40 million liquidity, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Except that if they're going up at different rates, right? You have a greater impermanent loss, and you can play with those calculators yourself and see. And I'm just saying that because all of us got it stuck in our head, we're going to get 10,000x, 1,000x. I'm going to turn $1,000 into $1 million. And then you look at 1,000, you look at the impermanent loss, you're like, oh man, you mean if I just held them and they all go to the top and I sell it at the top, I'm going to get double? That's what I'm going to do, right? But that, that's an if, that's a maybe. It's not necessarily what's going to happen, right? And so a lot of people aren't going to do it because we require them to put the liquidity up now, right? I mean, or soon, potentially, or time it, right? I mean, it just starts getting into some detail about how to actually get out.
One more question before we move on. Mr. Chuck, is it more beneficial to the ecosystem if someone bought and never sold or added liquidity pairs and never touched it, raising the price floor versus extractable value?
It's more beneficial if you go out and onboard 100 people, even if it's just $100, like, because that guy's going to watch his $100 turn into 1,000 and get happy and excited about that. And he's going to tell somebody like that. Like the only thing that matters is more people coming into the game.
Yeah,
because otherwise it's just me and Crispy out competing everyone else on the network and taking all the real estate away from you. And I don't think that's a fair game. So go out and bring new blood in, because it is really an opportunity to build up a nice wave. All crypto is Ponzi-ish in that, or I shouldn't say crypto. I should say all investments are Ponzi-ish in that they require more capital inflows to create price runs. That's just how markets work. Like, so it can be one big whale or it can be 1,000 fish, but we need more people getting interested. And then the question of the chicken or the egg, is it going to take a big green candle to get? Well, I mean, yeah, technically when Pulse was pumping like a madman, I'm pretty sure we saw more activity, right? So here we are, January 1st, we saw transactions explode through January. Active wallets did start to trend up here between January 2nd and January 22nd, and then it peaked on February 18th. So you can actually watch these data points for, leading indicators on what is actually happening. Is it just one whale pumping the price chart, or is it actual activity on the chain? And this is the type of stuff we want to see an increase. And we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing a decrease.
Is that the key? Just giving people a reason to, number one, stay, number two, tell more people. And that kind of like just that feedback loop that I feel like we had, for the early years of Hex. It was like, started small, grew into something big. We got all these success stories, got everyone just high-fiving. It's all good. Okay, now the next thing, PulseChain, all that stuff. And then, okay, things sideways, okay, down for a little bit, bear market. Who knows? I see all that stuff too. is it just getting back to like in any system, in any game you're playing, you know, that has those types of like, we need fresh capital to keep growing the system and to keep people like motivated and not just in the trenches for years and years and years without you know, putting in the hard work and feel like you're then just the uncertainty levels rising instead of going down. Yeah, how do we is that the key to getting more value?
I think the value is here. It's just that the market doesn't appreciate it. So the value is in the cheaper transactions and the blockchain being alive, and this twin turbo relationship between Ethereum and PulseChain and the community that's left, right? I think that's pretty cool too. It's you know, made a lot of friends in this community, and there's still a lot of money being made even now, even though it doesn't feel like it. Like there's a class of people that just keep climbing up and increasing their position size, and they're not having to necessarily dump on people and rug people to do it. That's the thing, is like the really skilled ones, they are utilizing liquidity in different ways to like make a market and give people opportunity. And then in so doing, you create an attractive asset for people to get into. And then some money starts to flow that direction. And then anyway, without getting into specifics, like that's all happening now too in this supposed, you know, sideways action. People are climbing up the ladder every day. And so as long as they're the right kinds of people that are benevolent, we're in good shape. I think PulseChain's in really good shape right now. It's kind of like playing possum. It's like acting like it's a dead chain, but it's really just waiting for its right moment to like explode in value. And you know, if these P copies really start to go up in value significantly, I mean, how could somebody outside the chain not want to at least look at it and figure out why did that happen? Like it's really going to shock the market. You know, Hex is one piece of this, but that might come later. But some of these P copies, like if they go up a lot higher in value, and then some exchange finds out they have all this value, like, what are they going to do? Are they going to list it? Are they going to dump it? Are they, you know, and every time you get one of them to take an action, it's kind of like we won because we got them to use the chain. So eventually it just builds and builds and builds on itself. And you get this like massive potential where people flood into the chain to like take advantage of the mystery of how is that even possible? How did, like, what even happened there? And people, you might find people that got overnight rich because they came in and listened to like a friend, like this rigs.service comes to mind, like saying, you know, go buy this P copy or that P copy, and then becoming a whale in that new coin when it's super illiquid. And then, you know, as the chain appreciates in value, some guy totally forgot that he bought that coin, and they come back and like, holy crap, I have, you know, 6 or 7 figures in this P copy coin. What am I supposed to do with it? You know, and some of that might go back into the core assets at that point. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this all plays out. It's definitely way bigger than just Hex at this point, but it doesn't make Hex less valuable. That's all.
It's crazy to see that 50K to be a dolphin in Hex right now. That's just, wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just one more thing on the P copy that I think is interesting. Because the narrative before was, you know, what if parity, right? Like, what if we can get them to parity? What if these amazing things can happen with that, whether they work or not? But it almost seems like another thing is PulseChain's, the P copies, not all of them, some of them still have utility, and some of them, you know, may, you know, TBD what they're going to do when PulseChain's liquidity grows and all that stuff too. But or any other type of plays. What if the people from Ethereum that launched them come over and start making them work on PulseChain and all that stuff too? But majority is that PulseChain's native like meme coin play is like the P copies of like, we've already got a ton of meme coin. I mean, outside of the newly launched meme coins, of course, but like the P copies by default, unless they have some utility on PulseChain, is that like PulseChain's like narrative that hasn't played out yet? Or is that, does that give us an advantage?
The first major utility is speculation. That's the initial, you know, Bitcoin, what gave it its first utility? Speculation. The future of money, speculation. You know, it never ended up being peer-to-peer cash ever. But can any of these coins be speculated on? Yeah. There's a bunch of them right here on GoPulse. And they're all moving around and they're all doing something. It's a whole new market. And, this might be another one. Crispy said the other day, this might be another one of Richard's prophecies that comes true, which is just that this becomes this massive multi-billion-dollar market, these copied coins, and any value means that it's transferable into the native Ethereum version. And I think like what success would look like is where there's actually a significant amount of some of these P copies bridged in and paired together with their counterpart, and they start to trade, which would create even more liquidity on the chain.
Just to speak to,
it would also give us more. This just reminded me, this would be a whole new way of bringing liquidity to PulseChain that doesn't look like what it looks like now, where it's like we're relying on those top 5 coins on the bridge. This would be giving us access to Ethereum liquidity on Ethereum through these connected P copy to E copy pairs paired together, swappable, interchangeable for each other, and then those are bridged back out to capture the ETH value on the other chain, which really reinforces the kind of like the twin sister concept of these two chains and making sure that both of them become even more liquid.
Just this, before we go on from the question though, too, I think it's an interesting question. What are the pros and cons of if somebody had $1 million and they come in the ecosystem, and would you what are the benefits in just making that a buy for Hex, for example, or just adding $1 million worth of liquidity and just kind of walking, like either one, just walking away for a year or two? Is there any benefits in either one in that situation?
I just think it's a super nuanced question. Crispy, read that question one more time and think about it for a second. But what's most beneficial? Out of these options, I think you got to think of it more like buckets. 33% of it you do liquidity with, 33% of it you buy and you hold, 33% of it maybe you trade it. I don't know. You can, but you never want to go all in one concept on this stuff. I mean, you're asking a kind of like if you had to just pick one, buying and holding is going to be, it's going to take supply off the market and it's going to increase the price floor. So that might be the easiest answer, right? But as an investor, you're going to want to look at all 3 options and probably use them to different degrees, because it's all good for the chain. Any activity is good. Even selling is good for the chain. I know that's probably really controversial, but it gives people opportunity to get a coin cheaper. And if it's a good coin with product market fit, like who doesn't want more good coins at a better price? Like if ink went down to $1, how many people would buy that? I'll probably, at this point, probably a lot. I see people bridging in and buying millions of dollars of that stuff regularly.
I keep going back to with the just ecosystem and with Hex, where the prices went down so much, and there's all these other options on PulseChain and all that. You gotta, I'm going to speculate. I have a feeling Richard knew. To me, he had to know this was going to happen. He had to know that when the L1 came online, a ton of different people are going to come in, a lot from the Hex community, a lot from outside, and they're going to go build stuff, or they're going to go launch coins, or they're going to go participate in whatever games they think are fun, and maybe they just whatever, they're going to make their own decisions and do different stuff. It's if he knew that, why would there? It almost makes me think like there couldn't be a way where he would do that and then Hex would just die. He had to be like, yeah, this is going to happen, but it's going to be okay because of this. Whether it's the liquidity thing, whether again, Hart's law, everything bonded together, the rising tide lifts all ships type of thing, or some kind, other plays in the ecosystem. There had to be something where it's not like, okay, if I launch PulseChain, this is going to kill Hex. I just can't believe that statement. Either, is he wrong, or is there's something there? What do you guys think?
Crispy? I know I have something to say about it.
I think it's a long game, right? It's the long game. Delayed gratification, long periods of time are involved, more than most of us can keep in our brains. And so, yeah, I mean, did anybody really, if we could just think about it, talk about anything. You launch, if we were talking about a new chain being launched, wouldn't you think people are going to speculate? don't you think? I mean, we can look at this over and over again, and that mean in our heads. It's just when we get personally involved, we're like, oh, all of a sudden we're biased. But yeah, new chain, people are going to trade, people are going to do dumb stuff. Some people are going to do smart stuff. None of that means that X, Y, and Z is dead just on the surface, right? Doesn't mean Hex is dead just because we have a new chain that's operating there, right? It's really going to depend long term.
I guess it's too making the case for the massive splitting of buying pressure being okay. And you mentioned long term, and that that could be an answer too. It will get settled once prices go up, liquidity, people come in, all that stuff too. But is that the play? Is like the ideal that this thing will grow? I know it will grow, and everything will go up.
In my version, yes. I mean, everybody's gonna have their own damn opinion about this, but yeah, I mean, we needed to take the capital and create 5 new locations for our coffee shop, so in 5 different parts of town, right? So that we get 5 times the business, but it's going to take some time to pay the mortgage off, right? And sure, it's uncomfortable as hell because maybe I did like, by the way, what I had in value. I liked it, right? I didn't want it to go down, but now I got 5 sets of things to work with. So that's like a different angle. It's investing into the future because you can't really, any business, right? A venture you're going into, if you're not investing into it with capital, what else is there to do? Everybody sell, right? Yeah.
So I think like a different approach on this kind of question is like the day that Hex died was the day that Vitalik raised the gas fees, but by increasing the S load. Because what ended up happening was that would have killed EHEX from being able to do anything valuable for very many people. It would have really turned into a whales game, the same way that ETH gas fees got out of control. And it's something that needed to be solved for. So like the thing that needed to be done was he needed to fork the network and do what he did. But the narrative had changed now from because originally there was no thought of. There was never going to be a need to have anything besides Hex. Like it was going to solve for, a better Bitcoin. But that changed the day that the PulseChain sacrifice was announced. And so like people are living, and myself included, was living in this fantasy land of that it's okay if gas fees are high and then the narrative is still the same and Hex is still king. I think a lot of that doesn't apply anymore yet. But that doesn't mean that Hex can't still have a huge chunk of the PulseChain pie, right? Like it's still going to solve for store value, deep liquidity, because it's tied in by its liquidity to Pulse, PulseX, and Ink. So they all will succeed together, and they'll be useful in their own way. Each one solves for a different problem. None of them does the same thing. And, Richard even said, you're going to need 33% Pulse, 33% PulseX, 33% Hex. And at the time, Ink was unknown. Well, now you have to go 25% each one at a minimum. Maybe that those ratios change over time per whatever you're comfortable with in your investment thesis. But, things changed that day, right? Because you just weren't going to have the situation where Hex on Ethereum is the next Bitcoin. That changed. I overlooked that too. A lot of us just got hoodwinked in some ways by decisions made that was out of our control, out of our community's control by the Ethereum guys. And can that stuff change in the future? Yeah, which would make EHEX way more valuable again. I just got done saying that gas fees are cheap again, and so at this point, like you can still do things profitably on the ETH chain with longer term stakes, even at these prices. I mean, you have to have a lot of units though. So it's a reset. It's an entire system reset on both of the hexes. Yeah. It's way more complex and difficult than it needed to be, but our hand was forced, and Richard's going to make sure that things get buttoned up and nice for the end of the bull run. So you just got to hang in there, and you're not wrong to be invested in Hex. It just looks a little bit different now.
Yeah. Are we just in the waiting period where, a lot of the stuff, we don't know a lot of the strategies. We haven't seen a lot of things play out yet. Is it just being able to believe that it will be better one day, that it will, like that we will be able to, onboarding will become easier. I feel like that's the biggest thing, is like, man, how do we onboard? What chart do we use? What method do we use? How do we, what tool do we use? We have all these different pieces. And again, I put together a ton of onboarding stuff myself, and a lot of other people have. And it's just like, how do we get more people to be more excited about these core products, such as Hex?
Well, I think, having that longer term mindset is a huge piece of that, right? And Kirito Ewok's talking about that, time in the market, longer term mindset, which is counterculture to, cryptocurrency kind of mindset, which is get rich overnight in a lot of cases, or to play the casino games. I did want to bring up this screen too. Oh, nice. You got that one.
Yes.
Hey, let me share. Yeah, let me share this quick, because then you might be able to piggyback off with that holder data. This is the all-time Hex chart, and we're basically saying that we're 17,000%, so 170x off that candle, but really it's from here at the 0.0055 level. So EHEX today is 22x off the lows. Yeah, that's not a bragging stat anymore after 1,600 days. Where was I going with this? Because somebody in here said that they're like disappointed that they have like a staking ladder. Well, things changed. Like, what was I going to say about this chart? Man, it was such a good point too. It'll come back to me. But oh, this is what it was. Crispy mentioned this to me the other day. We didn't spend very much time up here, guys. I mean, it looks like we did. That we were like, oh, Hex was 50 cents, Hex was 40 cents, dude.
30
we
days.
were above 30 cents for how many days?
60 days, maybe, something like that.
You might as well just erase all this data up here. So from the point that we went above 17 cents, by the way, which happened because of the PulseChain sacrifice and the hype behind it. You take away the PulseChain sacrifice, you don't get the run up to 50 cents. So, I mean, really, Hex should have never even crossed like a lot of these lines. Like, let's see. I mean, this, for all intents and purposes, this data here, not many people got into that. There was maybe 10,000 hexagons back then, and most of them sold before the big pump. Okay. This is like really where, in my opinion, where value is for Hex, is inside of here. Anything above this around like 2 cents, it was luck, right? I mean, you could maybe extend that up to maybe into here around 5-7 cents. I think I went back and I said that all this action up here, people talk about Hex at 8 cents, 10 cents, 12 cents, 30 cents, 40, 50. Like, this is just such a blink of an eye in time. We were over that for about a year. We were above 10 cents or fluctuating above that level for 330 days ish. Or maybe you want to say it was about 320 days. And so, like, in terms of investing, like, that's not where fair value is. That's just where like peak euphoria was. So I think, we're just resetting the base. I mean, of course, you're looking at the EHEX chart here. You got to think PHEX plus EHEX is probably somewhere around here. Let me make that a big thick line. So this is where the combined Hex price is right now, sitting on top of support, 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 and then, ignore EHEX here for a second. This is where we're at. It's right on that long-term support line. So we're at a floor right now before this next bull market for Hex really kind of kicks off. And I think, Crispy, please, you can add on to that too, about just how short of amount of a time we were really up in these levels. And so you can't really say that that's what it's worth. That's just what euphoria took us to.
Yeah, I agree with that too, man. It's surprising because I remember it differently from being out there. And then I did another analysis last night that very, very general, right? The price has been higher. Combined Hex price has been higher 80% of the time than it is now, and lower 20% of the time. So excellent Pareto. I was like, there's no way this came out to 80-20. Yeah, 80-20.
Wow.
I mean, pretty damn close. Maybe it's a 0.5% off or something. But meanwhile, we talk about adoption, people coming in. These are addresses, but on the PulseChain side, it hasn't paused, man. Staking rolled over. You can actually see on the charts that staking rolled over. Nice rounded chart. But as far as holders on PulseChain, up and to the right. So somebody believes in the speculation, right? Because that's what's going on. People speculating. Maybe they think Sack Daddy's going to buy, and then the prices will go up. Maybe they think other people are going to buy. So yeah, I mean, it's continued to go on and up and to the right in terms of the number of wallets holding that hex. And yeah.
Before we wrap up here in a minute, just wanted to ask you, I think this is probably an important question for people out there who are, debating. They've been in the community for a while, or maybe they're just new too. But what are people today? What are you betting when you're buying hex? You're buying hex, and maybe separate buying hex versus staking hex today. What are you betting on? What are you doing when you do that?
Oh, I think you're betting on the success of PulseChain, because in any event, you got that $500 million market cap, which could balloon to like a $50 billion market cap again easily, especially with any little bit of adoption and green candles on Pulse and Ink and PulseX. I mean, it's just going to ride up. And if you were here pre-fork, you got, hex on both chains still, if you didn't dump them. And I just think that, you kind of just stake it long, and you count on this PulseChain being like a battleground that people build on, right? And you get tons of kind of new cool stuff getting built every day on this chain. You can't ignore all that anymore. That's happening. There's real building happening here, and real price appreciation happening.
So the onboarding conversation is like, hey, look at this chain, look at PulseChain. New chain hasn't had a real pump yet. Let's talk about data around that.
This is what happened when Richard said he's going to compete with the SEC, and we went up 4x in 2 months, and it was like just easy pump. And I mean, everyone felt euphoric, and that was just like a test pump, you come back in now, you're buying in at a time when it's, looking good to base out here. I don't really think we need to go too much lower on Pulse price, because we didn't really touch on that. But so much as if you're a Hexican now, you really have to kind of up your skills and your game a little bit and pay attention to more coins than just one, which that might be one of the reasons why there's been a lack of interest in Hex, is because they thought the game was going to be buy and stake Hex and wait, which will still work, but then just don't even look at it or complain about it. Just come back later. And that's why there's probably low activity and engagement in it right now. Twitter, I don't see anything, no Hex tags on Twitter anymore. I don't get any of that coming across my feed at all.
I use Lunar Crush, and I still sort by Pulse and Hex, and I still see some. I mean, it's definitely, I think PulseChain tag is I imagine more popular, but I still see some. But it's not. It feels like it's not this like pure Hex data like we used to see. Not a lot of that, not as much as we used to see. So it's like that, and they're like, okay, what is Hex? And you're like, oh well, let me show you this T-shirt chart, and then oh wow, look at if before it was so expensive and now it's cheap, and and then Hex Scout has a great onboarding process on there too for that stuff. So at least we have some tools.
The stream probably sounded kind of bearish, but it really wasn't. It was actually bullish, and the positive spin on it is that Hex is probably going to go to a few dollars at a minimum this cycle, and you're waiting. It's just the same game you've always been doing. If you're a staker, you're just waiting and rolling stakes probably, or at this point you're probably not selling down here, so you're just waiting for the rest of the market to catch up. Here's the Pulse chart. Look at back here in October where the volume trended down. We're basically repeating that out where volume is trending down, and these declining volumes always precede a massive breakout. And Richard said, look for July 8th, which is here. So maybe we'll come back and revisit when Crispy and I are in Europe, and we'll see what happens. But we could potentially be seeing a big breakout occurring in July or August. Those are typically good months for crypto, and we're getting this declining volume coming into a pump, just like we did here, just like we did here. This was declining volume to a lesser extent into a big pump. But really what I want you to pay attention to is this particular period here, because it's setting up the exact same way once again. And all you did this time was you got rid of the Nick Cherries, infamous old Hex and Pulse dumper, took millions out of the ecosystem and left. You got rid of these kinds of guys that were just predatory, malicious dumpers that just wanted they put a low input cost in a long time ago and they extracted like tens or hundreds of X the value out of it. We needed a lot of that out so that it wasn't going to hold us back on every pump forever. And I think we're getting to the end of the road on that stuff. So, and you can see it by the declining volume here.
Soon.
Oh, and then Hex. Hex is fine. It's still up and potentially going to make a higher low against Pulse. So you'd want to see some sort of a reversal here within the next 2 months against Pulse. And then when it moves quick. So you could see something like this where it bleeds, like it bleeds against Pulse, bleeds, and then it goes flat, and then boom, you're gonna get a huge pump, and you're gonna get a lot of Pulse value for doing that. So there's always a way to wish-wash your money in and out of Hex and Pulse if you're liquid, or you can just buy the lows and the dip when it bleeds down and look for the inflection point. Right now, the inflection point here on the RSI is this 30 level. That's kind of where it likes to turn around. So PX looks good, and EHEX, in my opinion, looks even better. I think just so many hundreds of millions of this stuff has been absorbed by people that want to see it go higher. So it's ranging. It's flat and ranging against Pulse now. So that's promising. I mean, you can just get, what's 100 million of these now? $128,000, which is a lot, but it's not a lot for multi-millionaires in crypto. They can buy up, 1% or a tenth of a percent of the supply for almost nothing.
Godwell, where Godwell, Dev?
Yeah, so I mean, when this reverses, it's going to reverse hard, right? And that's when you're going to have to worry about getting left behind. But yeah, I mean, I think the charts look really good right now.
I think Richard Hart, not wrong about that much stuff. I think the hashtag before Richard Hart was right, has been right about a lot of stuff. But new hashtag, let's get it trending. Richard Hart will be right. That's what we all hope and want to see.
Last comment. I just got to remind John Wallace that the reason why this will go to multi-dollars is because it's bonded. The same reason why you won't see V3 for PulseX is the same reason why Hex will get to $1, because 8 symmetrical liquidity pairings is a pumpamental. So,
hey, Crypto 7 said 77x, and so did Sami at one point. What's 77x from here? Well, as far as that gets us.
I don't know, but I like it.
0.006, right? 0.06 is the price, roughly. That gets us only to 46 cents. So we got to go 100 more than that, right? So
let's do it. Let's do a community. Let's use the tools we have to get people into, again, what I believe is the greatest ecosystem on earth. Let's do it.
Yeah, and just to kind of add one thing, I think, to what Axis was saying. I think a lot of people don't understand that a solid buying, like we're like all tied up in this. We like to think things are a big deal, and we're trading $500,000 during the day, and people are trading it over and over again, back and forth, right? And we think that's a lot of volume. That's not a lot of volume, right? A lot of volume is going to be when the people on the sidelines come in and they put $1, $2, $3, $5 million buys. Well, maybe it won't be at one time, but they start pumping that kind of money in. When that happens, you have this multiplication of money, the speed of money effect, because it, just because they come in and they get Pulse doesn't mean Pulse is the only thing goes up. Pulse is connected to everything. So everything's going to go up. And the same thing if they pick a different token, right? They'll push Pulse up through that mechanism and through all the spider web that's there. So my initial perception is, it's going to take a lot of money to pump. But I don't think it's going to take that much to pump. Is it more money than I have? Yeah. But $50 million could get you from 0 to 60 in no time.
Mm-hmm. So, we were doing $100 million days on the PulseChain stack, and at the top around 20 to 50 cents, we were doing $100 million days.
All right, everyone. That's all we got for you today. Access Live, Crispy, accesslive.com. If I remember correctly, xfire.io, new website.
Come visit.
Good stuff. You guys on Twitter? You on OnlyFans? You on Farmers Now?
Yeah,
yes.
I go by a different name on OnlyFans, so We'll not add that here, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Hexfire IO.
Awesome. Gents,
Thanks,
always good to
thanks,
have
Mac.
you guys. Of course, of course. Always love to have these conversations. Everyone else out there, Scivive and 5555. We are out.
All right. See you later.